The storm within. When caring becomes a cage, there comes a moment in life when the weight of empathy turns into a burden. When caring, that most human of virtues, becomes a quiet form of self-destruction. You wake up already exhausted, not from what you've done, but from what you've felt. You've carried the pain of others like it was your duty to fix the world. You've mistaken breaking for caring, and now every heartbeat feels like an apology for not being able to save everyone. This is the storm within, the beautiful soul who feels too deeply, trapped in the chaos of their own compassion. You see suffering, and your instinct is to reach for it, to absorb it, to make it stop, even when it costs your own peace. You mistake stillness for indifference, when in truth it is the oxygen your spirit is begging for. Modern psychology calls it emotional overextension, the point where empathy overrides boundaries and the brain's reward system floods with cortisol instead of oxytocin. You're no longer helping, you're drowning in the very emotions you sought to heal, like a candle trying to light the world while burning itself away. Seneca warned that he who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than necessary. Yet in our culture of constant caring, we glorify exhaustion as evidence of goodness. We equate sacrifice with virtue and silence with neglect. We believe that to be a good person, we must endlessly feel, until we forget what peace even looks like. But the Stoics knew something different. They understood that true compassion is not the surrender of the self, but the mastery of it. That to preserve humanity, you must protect its vessel, your mind. Emotional detachment, then, is not withdrawal, it's clarity. It's the moment you stop trying to control what was never yours to control, the hearts, choices, and chaos of others. There is a difference between feeling and falling, between caring and collapsing, between love and self-erasure. To detach emotionally is not to turn cold, it's to stop burning yourself to keep others warm. And so, we return to the question that stands at the threshold of this entire journey. Where is the line between compassion and self-erasure? The Stoics asked this question centuries ago, and in their answers, we find the beginning of peace. The Stoic paradox. How the wise loved without attachment to the untrained heart. Detachment sounds like betrayal, as if to love without clinging were to love without depth. But the Stoics saw love differently. They believed that true affection could only exist in freedom, not in need. For them, love was not a desperate grasp for permanence, but a serene acknowledgement of what is. Fragile, transient, and beautiful precisely because of its impermanence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." Yet even in this wholeheartedness, there is a quiet understanding. Everything you love is borrowed from time. The Stoic loves deeply, but without illusion. He walks through the world open-hearted yet unchained, aware that to possess is to fear loss, and fear corrodes love itself. Seneca spoke of friendship and affection as exercises of virtue, not attachments of desperation. To him, love was not a contract of control, but a reflection of character, a practice in seeing the divine in others while never losing sight of the divine within oneself. The Stoic heart gives, but it does not collapse. It holds, but it does not imprison. It stands firm amid the tide of impermanence, finding strength in understanding rather than possession. Modern neuroscience echoes this paradox. Our brains are wired for connection. Oxytocin and dopamine form the chemical threads of bonding, yet these same mechanisms can enslave us when we confuse pleasure with permanence. The Stoic ideal of loving without clinging mirrors the neuroscientific truth that peace lies not in suppressing emotion, but in regulating it. Freedom is not found in coldness, but in awareness. To detach, then, is to love from a place of wholeness, not from absence. It is to see others not as extensions of your identity, but as fellow travelers on the path of impermanence. The wise do not withdraw from emotion, they refine it. They learn to care without craving, to feel without fracturing. And here lies the paradox that defines this entire philosophy. The deeper your understanding, the more tender your love becomes. When you stop trying to own what you love, you finally learn how to truly cherish it. But what does this detachment look like inside the human mind? The neuroscience of attachment, dopamine, oxytocin, and the reward trap. Inside the human mind, love is both chemistry and consciousness. Every bond you form, every friendship, every attachment, every heartbreak is written into the circuitry of your brain. What feels like destiny is, in part, biology. Dopamine drives your desire, oxytocin seals your bond, and serotonin rewards your belonging. You are not weak for wanting connection. You are human. But the same chemistry that allows you to love can also enslave you. Dopamine, the molecule of motivation, was never meant to deliver peace, only pursuit. It rewards anticipation more than fulfillment, which is why longing so often feels stronger than contentment. Andrew Huberman explains that our reward system was designed for survival, to keep us chasing food, safety, and social acceptance. Yet in the modern world, this same system chases validation, approval, and emotional security, turning love into a neurological addiction. Oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, deepens this cycle. It creates trust, attachment, and empathy, but also makes you vulnerable to emotional dependence. It whispers, "Stay close, stay safe." And when that bond is threatened, the brain reacts as if facing physical pain. The anterior cingulate cortex lights up in the same way it does during injury. Heartbreak, quite literally, hurts. Joe Dispenza speaks of this as the chemical identity of the past. The body remembering emotional addiction long after logic has moved on. You replay conversations, you idealize memories, not because you choose to, but because your neurons are seeking another hit of emotional familiarity. The mind becomes a loop, a biochemical craving disguised as love. The Stoics, long before neuroscience could name these mechanisms, saw the same pattern. They warned against being ruled by what they called apatheia, the uncontrolled passions. They understood that attachment, when unexamined, chains the soul to dependency. To love wisely is to see the process clearly, to feel fully without surrendering reason. Modern psychology aligns with this timeless insight. Emotional regulation is not suppression, it is sovereignty. When you recognize the chemical roots of your emotions, you gain the space to respond, not react. You begin to experience connection as choice, not compulsion. And this is where philosophy meets biology, when the awareness of chemistry becomes the birth of freedom. For if the brain builds attachment, the mind can reshape it. Neuroplasticity allows the heart to heal by teaching the body a new emotional language, one not built on craving, but on clarity. If chemistry shapes emotion, philosophy teaches us how to transcend it. Apatheia versus apathy, the difference between freedom and coldness. Many mistake Stoic detachment for emotional frost, as if the wise man stands untouched by the world, indifferent to joy or pain. But apatheia, the Stoic ideal, is not apathy. It is not the death of feeling, but the discipline of it. It is emotional clarity, the state in which the soul no longer trembles before what it cannot control. Apathy is the closing of the heart. Apatheia is its purification. The apathetic person feels nothing because they have turned away from life. The Stoic feels everything, yet remains unbroken because he sees everything in its proper proportion. To live in apatheia is to stop granting external events the authority to dictate your inner peace. The world continues to move. Storms rise, people change, loss comes. But your mind, rooted in reason, remains calm. Seneca warned that those who confuse detachment with numbness forsake virtue under the guise of tranquility. The Stoics were warriors of emotion, not fugitives from it. Their discipline was forged in engagement, in loving, serving, striving, while maintaining mastery over the self. Apatheia does not remove the tides, it teaches you how to navigate them. Modern neuroscience confirms this inner architecture. Emotional regulation does not mean suppressing activity in the limbic system, the seat of raw feeling, but strengthening the prefrontal cortex, the rational governor of the brain. Through mindfulness and reflective awareness, neural pathways are rewired. Reactions slow, perception widens. Daniel Goleman calls this the foundation of emotional intelligence, the ability to remain present within emotion without being consumed by it. Freedom, then, is not the absence of emotion, but the absence of enslavement to it. The Stoic does not freeze the heart. He refines it until it burns clean. He transforms passion into purpose, reaction into reflection, and desire into discipline. Apatheia is not emotional death, it is emotional resurrection. To reach this state is to finally see emotion as what it truly is: energy, neither good nor evil, waiting for direction. The question is not whether you should feel, but whether you will let feeling rule you or serve you. The Stoics didn't silence emotion, they purified it. The fire of emotion, energy. Without possession, emotion is not your enemy. It is fire, wild, luminous, and sacred. It can illuminate your path or consume your world, depending on who holds the torch. The Stoics understood that the goal was never to extinguish this flame, but to master it. They knew that a life without emotion is not peace, but paralysis. The challenge is not to feel less, but to feel rightly, to transform the chaos of passion into the fuel of virtue. Cleanthes, in his hymn to Zeus, wrote that the wise live in harmony with the divine fire that governs all things. To him, emotion was part of this fire, the divine energy of existence itself. But when left undisciplined, it blinds. When directed by reason, it warms, enlightens, and creates. The task of philosophy, therefore, is not to quench emotion, but to give it purpose. Modern neuroscience mirrors this ancient insight. Emotion begins in the limbic system, fast, primal, and reactive, but through the prefrontal cortex, it can be refined into deliberate thought and conscious choice. The space between stimulus and response is where mastery is born. Andrew Huberman often describes this as the pause before action, the neurobiological interval where we reclaim control from impulse. It is in this pause that the Stoic lives. When anger arises, the Stoic does not suppress it, he examines it. When sorrow comes, he allows it but does not let it define him. This is emotional alchemy. The ability to turn pain into wisdom, frustration into patience, and desire into discipline. Every feeling becomes a teacher when met with awareness. Seneca taught that anger, if not restrained, is more harmful than the injury that provokes it. Yet restraint is not repression. It is redirection. It is the art of holding the sword without swinging it. The Stoic channels emotion through reason, the way a blacksmith channels heat through metal, shaping it into strength. To live this way is to recognize that emotion is not meant to own you. You are its steward, not its servant. The fire burns either way, but in your hands it can become light. But to discipline emotion, we must first see its illusions clearly. The mirror of illusion, the false stories we tell ourselves. The greatest suffering rarely comes from reality itself, but from the stories we attach to it. The mind, left unchecked, becomes a playwright of tragedy, turning fleeting moments into lifelong wounds. Someone forgets to call, and it becomes rejection. A glance turns into judgment. Silence becomes proof that you are unworthy. What truly happens is neutral. What you believe about it is not. Epictetus taught, "It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things." This single insight dismantles the architecture of unnecessary pain. Between event and interpretation lies a world of freedom, the space where you can choose clarity over chaos. Yet most people never find that space. They live imprisoned by perception, unable to separate the flicker of emotion from the fiction it creates. Neuroscience confirms what philosophy intuited. The brain's default mode network, responsible for self-referential thought, spins constant narratives about the self and others. It seeks coherence, even in chaos, preferring a painful story to an uncertain silence. Over time, these stories carve grooves in the neural landscape. The more we replay them, the more they feel like truth. This is how illusions become identities. Joe Dispenza calls this the neural rehearsal of suffering. The mind relives emotional pain so often that the body memorizes it. You no longer need the event. The emotion alone sustains the story. The past becomes a loop, the illusion a habit. And so the ego, that fragile construct built on stories, protects itself by exaggerating threat, by personalizing everything. It whispers, "They meant to hurt you. You are not enough. You are losing." But the Stoic learns to look directly into this mirror and see through it. He recognizes that emotion is often just distorted perception. He questions the story, slows the reaction, and chooses interpretation over instinct. This act, simple but profound, breaks the illusion's power. The moment you realize that your mind can lie to you, you awaken. The shattering of illusion is not destruction, it is liberation. For when you stop mistaking your thoughts for truth, you begin to see life as it is, not as fear paints it. When the illusion breaks, awareness begins. The practice of inner distance, observing, without absorbing. There is a quiet strength that comes from learning to observe your emotions instead of becoming them. To watch anger rise without speaking through it. To feel pain without collapsing into it. To sense the pull of fear and yet choose stillness. This is not detachment from life, it is detachment within life. It is the art of standing in the center of your own storm and seeing clearly. The Stoics called this the discipline of perception. Epictetus reminded his students that we are not disturbed by the world, but by our interpretations of it, and that interpretation is a choice. Marcus Aurelius practiced this each morning in his meditations, preparing his mind to face chaos with composure. He wrote not to escape emotion, but to train awareness, to remain the witness amid the waves. In modern terms, this is metacognition, the ability to think about your thoughts, to perceive your inner life as if from a higher vantage point. Neuroscience shows that mindfulness activates the prefrontal cortex and quiets the amygdala, the emotional alarm system. Each time you pause, breathe, and name what you feel, you create neural distance. The emotion no longer owns you. You are watching it move across the sky of consciousness. Cognitive behavioral therapy is built upon this Stoic insight. By questioning automatic thoughts, you weaken their hold. Is this true? Is this useful? What else could this mean? These simple questions turn reaction into reflection. Over time, the mind learns a new pattern: observation before identification. This inner distance is not apathy, it is clarity. You still feel the warmth of joy, the ache of loss, the pulse of desire, but you experience them as passing weather, not permanent identity. You stop drowning in every wave because you realize you are the ocean. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Inner distance is the daily practice of that truth. Each time you refuse to absorb what isn't yours, the anger of another, the chaos of the world, the noise of fear, you strengthen the citadel of your mind. Distance doesn't mean disconnection. It means seeing clearly. Compassion with boundaries. Loving without losing the self. To love deeply is human. To love wisely is divine. Many believe compassion means endless giving, a dissolving of self into the needs of others. But love without boundaries is not compassion, it is self-abandonment. True compassion has form and structure, a pulse guided by discernment. It understands that to protect your peace is not selfishness, but stewardship of your own humanity. The Stoic philosophers never rejected love, they sought to elevate it. Hierocles described concentric circles of concern, from self to family to community to all humankind, and he taught that virtue lies in extending those circles while maintaining the integrity of the center. To lose the self entirely is to weaken the very force that makes love possible. Boundaries, then, are not walls. They are the architecture of authentic care. Modern psychology and neuroscience echo this truth. Empathy, when unregulated, triggers the mirror neuron system so intensely that you begin to feel others' pain as your own. Over time, this leads to compassion fatigue, a burnout of the emotional brain. Daniel Goleman distinguishes between empathic distress and compassionate empathy. The first drains you, the second empowers you. Compassionate empathy emerges when awareness and boundaries coexist, when you can sense another's suffering without drowning in it. The Stoic heart practices this daily. It listens, but does not absorb. It helps, but does not rescue to the point of ruin. It gives, but from fullness, not depletion. To love this way is to mirror the wisdom of nature. The sun shines on all things, yet remains centered in itself. Musonius Rufus taught that we serve others best when we are inwardly stable, for the unstable cannot heal instability. Neuroscience would call this emotional regulation. The Stoics would call it virtue in action. Both point to the same truth. Compassion is strongest when it flows from order, not chaos. To love rightly, then, is not to give all of yourself away, but to offer your presence without losing your foundation. The mature heart knows that saying no to what harms your peace is also an act of love, for yourself and for the world. To love rightly, we must first master our own energy, emotional alchemy, transforming pain into wisdom. Pain is inevitable, but suffering, the endless echo of pain within the mind, is not. The Stoics saw every hardship as raw material for transformation, as fire that tests the metal of the soul. They believed that what burns you can also forge you if you learn to hold it with awareness instead of resistance. Seneca wrote, "Fire tests gold, and adversity tests the brave." The purpose of pain is not punishment, it is purification. When something wounds you, the instinct is to recoil, to close, to curse, to ask, "Why me?" But pain is a mirror showing you where your expectations collided with reality. It reveals what you cling to. It exposes the illusions of permanence and control. And when you choose to face it, to study it, you begin to discover its alchemy, the quiet process by which emotion becomes understanding. Neuroscience describes this transformation as neuroplasticity. Every time you reinterpret pain, you rewire the brain. New pathways of resilience form. The prefrontal cortex strengthens its command over the emotional centers. Joe Dispenza calls this the act of becoming greater than your environment. You are no longer a prisoner of the event, but a sculptor of its meaning. Epictetus taught that the true test of character is not what happens to you, but how you use it. The Stoic sees adversity not as a thief of peace, but as a teacher of it. Through struggle, you learn patience. Through loss, humility. Through betrayal, discernment. Every wound carries within it the possibility of awakening if you refuse to let bitterness take root. Jordan Peterson often says that meaning is found not in comfort, but in the voluntary confrontation of suffering. To face pain consciously is to give it purpose. The Stoic and the neuroscientist agree, avoidance deepens pain, but awareness transforms it. When the mind stops fighting reality, healing begins. Pain is not the opposite of peace, it is its initiation. The fire that once threatened to destroy you becomes the light that guides you. Emotional alchemy is not forgetting the wound, it is remembering it differently. It is the ability to say, "This, too, shaped me into something unbreakable." But even transformation requires surrender, the surrender of control, learning to flow. With the Logos, there is a quiet liberation in realizing that not everything is yours to command. Control is a beautiful illusion, the mind's attempt to protect itself from the unknown. Yet the more tightly you hold the reins, the more chaos you create. The Stoics saw this clearly. Peace begins not in domination of life, but in cooperation with it. To live according to Logos, the rational order of existence, is to flow with the current of nature instead of fighting it. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself, the universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. In this, he revealed a paradox of power. We influence the world most deeply by mastering our inner response to it. The Stoic surrenders not out of weakness, but out of alignment. He does not abandon responsibility, he abandons resistance. Modern psychology names this surrender acceptance. It is the act of acknowledging reality as it is before choosing how to engage with it. Jordan Peterson describes this as balancing order and chaos, the discipline to act and the humility to let go. Neuroscience supports the same principle. The stress response calms when the mind stops demanding certainty. The parasympathetic system activates and peace is restored. To flow with the Logos is to stop wrestling the river. It means releasing your grip on outcomes, knowing that you can control effort, not result. You can choose virtue, not fate. The Stoic sees the divine intelligence in all movement, gain and loss, meeting and parting, creation and decay, and finds serenity in participation rather than possession. Seneca once wrote, "Submit to the present. Count each moment as a god or as a god's envoy." This is not passivity, it is harmony. It is the understanding that the same force that moves the stars also moves your life, and your task is not to resist it, but to dance with it. When you surrender the need to control, you discover something astonishing. Life begins to move through you with grace. Anxiety fades into trust. Effort becomes expression. What once felt like chaos begins to reveal its hidden order. When we release control, peace enters. The art of letting go, a daily discipline of release. Letting go is not a single act. It is a lifelong discipline. It is not forgetting nor pretending indifference, but the steady practice of loosening the mind's grip on what it cannot keep. The Stoics saw this not as resignation, but as wisdom. Each moment offers a quiet invitation to release the expectation, the resentment, the illusion of control. Freedom begins in the unclenching of the heart. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Receive without pride, let go without attachment." In these few words lies the essence of emotional balance. To receive is human, to release is divine. The Stoic wakes each morning aware that nothing belongs to him, not even the breath he draws, and therefore everything can be met with gratitude instead of fear. In neuroscience, this process mirrors the rewiring of neural pathways through repetition. Joe Dispenza teaches that the act of letting go reshapes the brain's connections, breaking the habitual loop of emotional addiction. When you stop rehearsing the same thoughts and reactions, new circuits of peace emerge. This is neuroplasticity in motion, the biology of surrender. The daily practice of release is subtle yet powerful. It can be as simple as pausing before reacting, as deliberate as writing in a journal what no longer serves you, as sacred as forgiving someone who will never apologize. Each act of release signals to the brain that survival no longer depends on control. The nervous system relaxes, the body exhales, the mind clears. Seneca called this the art of subtraction, the discipline of removing what weighs the soul. Modern psychology calls it cognitive reframing. Both describe the same truth. Peace is not something you acquire, but what remains when you stop holding on to what hurts. Letting go is not weakness. It is the highest expression of trust. Trust in reason, in nature, in the unfolding of life. It is the courage to say, I choose clarity over control, peace over possession. As we let go, something deeper awakens. The quiet realization that what is meant for us does not need to be forced. The witness within, conscious awareness beyond emotion. There is a part of you that has never been touched by chaos, the silent witness within. It observes your thoughts, your fears, your longing and your joy, yet remains unchanged. The Stoics called this the hegemonikon, the ruling faculty of the mind, the inner citadel that no storm can breach. It is here, in this stillness behind all experience, that freedom begins. Marcus Aurelius often returned to this idea. Withdraw into yourself. The rational soul is its own refuge. To withdraw is not to escape life, but to return to the center from which life can be seen clearly. The wise do not eliminate emotion. They learn to witness it without becoming its prisoner. They understand that the soul's peace depends not on what happens, but on what it identifies with. Modern neuroscience reveals a striking parallel. Studies show that when you practice mindfulness or self-awareness, activity increases in the prefrontal cortex, the brain's seat of observation and control, while emotional reactivity in the amygdala decreases. You are literally changing your brain each time you choose to witness instead of react. Awareness, in this sense, is biological transcendence. Joe Dispenza describes this as the mind observing the mind. When you can see your thoughts without judgment, the automatic patterns that once ruled you lose their power. The brain stops recycling the same emotional loops and a new state of consciousness emerges, one marked by calm, clarity, and choice. You no longer say, I am angry. You say, anger is arising. That single shift changes everything. Epictetus urged his students to remember, you are an actor in a play, of whatever length the playwright chooses. The self that suffers believes it is the role. The awakened self knows it is the actor. To step into this awareness is to experience peace that no external change can provide. The witness within does not reject the world. It embraces it from a higher plane of perception. In that spacious awareness, even pain becomes information, and emotion becomes movement through consciousness, not confinement within it. This awareness is where peace truly begins. Eudaimonia, the joy beyond reaction. There is a kind of joy that does not shout, does not depend, does not fade. It is not born of achievement or approval, but of alignment. The harmony between what you do and what you know to be right. The Stoics called it eudaimonia, the flourishing of the soul through virtue. It is not pleasure nor escape, but the steady radiance of integrity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if you seek tranquility, do less, or rather, do what is essential. His words point to a truth that modern life resists. Happiness is not the accumulation of experiences, but the subtraction of distraction. The more you act from principle rather than impulse, the quieter your inner world becomes. This quiet is not emptiness. it is fulfillment. Aristotle described eudaimonia as living in accordance with one's highest function, to use reason and virtue as guides. The Stoics expanded this into a daily practice: wisdom to discern, courage to act, justice to serve, and temperance to restrain. These four pillars create an internal order that no external chaos can overthrow. Neuroscience aligns with this ancient design. When the brain experiences coherence, when your actions align with your values, neural networks associated with reward and self-regulation synchronize. Dopamine stabilizes, cortisol lowers, and the mind experiences what Andrew Huberman calls a state of regulated pursuit, meaning replaces craving. This is not the high of pleasure, but the stability of purpose. Jordan Peterson often speaks of meaning as the antidote to chaos. When you live in truth, even pain serves a function. The Stoics understood this centuries earlier. Virtue transforms existence into coherence. You cease to oscillate between hope and fear because your compass no longer depends on outcomes. You find serenity in right action, and that serenity matures into joy. This joy is quiet yet unbreakable, the joy of being fully present, fully responsible, and fully alive. It is the joy of the mind that has mastered itself. Peace is not the absence of emotion, it is the mastery of it. The humanity of stillness, feeling without breaking. To be human is to feel, to love, to hope, to ache, to lose. These are not flaws of the human condition, they are its poetry. But the art lies in feeling without breaking. The Stoics never sought to become stone. They sought to become strong enough to remain tender in a turbulent world. Stillness for them was not emotional death. It was emotional depth, unshaken by the noise above it. Seneca wrote that the wise man is not unfeeling like a statue, but calm like the sea. Even the calmest sea has depth and motion. Its peace comes not from the absence of waves, but from the strength of what lies beneath them. That is what the Stoic strives for, the ability to feel the full range of human emotion while staying anchored to virtue, to reason, to inner order. Modern neuroscience shows that emotional resilience works the same way. Daniel Goleman calls it response flexibility, the space between stimulus and reaction, where conscious choice emerges. The stronger the prefrontal cortex's connection to the emotional centers of the brain, the greater your capacity to feel deeply without losing composure. Awareness becomes a stabilizer, compassion becomes sustainable. To feel without breaking, you must first accept emotion as movement, not identity. Joy and grief, hope and despair, they visit, they teach, and they pass. When you stop resisting them, they lose their power to shatter you. Pain becomes a message, not a verdict. You can cry without collapsing, love without clinging, let go without bitterness. The Stoic stillness is not the cold of detachment, but the warmth of understanding. It is the quiet strength of one who can hold both tears and gratitude in the same breath. It is the gentleness of a mind that no longer needs to defend itself from life. This is the humanity of stillness, a heart awake yet at peace. And so the one who has learned to detach learns how to truly love. The final reflection: peace as the highest form of power. At the end of every struggle, there comes a silence, not of defeat, but of realization. You begin to see that all your striving, your controlling, your emotional storms were never about the world outside you, but the war within you. The Stoics called this moment awakening, the quiet understanding that peace has always been your natural state, waiting beneath the noise of reaction. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is not a slogan of control, but of liberation. True power is not dominance, it is composure. The mind disciplined by awareness becomes unshakable, not because it hides from life, but because it has finally aligned with it. In the language of neuroscience, peace represents the full integration of the brain, the prefrontal cortex guiding emotion, the nervous system resting in balance, dopamine no longer chasing illusion but supporting purpose. The body itself reflects harmony. Breath deepens, tension dissolves, the heart beats not in urgency but in rhythm with the world. Peace is not passive. It is the most active state of mastery a human being can reach. It takes vigilance to remain calm when provoked, wisdom to remain kind when hurt, strength to remain grounded when everything trembles. This is the courage the Stoics revered, not the absence of fear, but the presence of clarity. The one who has cultivated peace holds a power greater than wealth or fame, the power to remain sovereign over the self, to be untouched by chaos, yet engaged in life, to feel deeply, yet never be enslaved by feeling, to live in harmony with reason and nature, knowing that whatever comes, you can meet it with grace. Finally, you understand, peace was never the prize, it was the path. The destination is not freedom from emotion, but freedom through it. When the noise of the world fades, what remains is you, still aware, alive. Strength in stillness, power in discipline, wisdom in action. And as the dawn breaks, the self that once trembled now stands serene, reborn in composure.